What's going on, everybody? It is Nathan Baker with FLX Trivia and the QKA Bills backers, QK Bills backers, and doing a podcast tonight, kind of throwing it out there with the schedule coming out tomorrow and a couple of games already being announced. One for the Bills. Figured we'd hop on and do a podcast and kind of go over the schedule, see where we're at, and even some off-season things that are going on with the Bills. And I actually have a guest tonight. So I've got a guest. As you saw, it was Baker and Bills. So I figured with basically this new podcast, I'm going to get one of the Bills. I'm going to get one of the Bills to talk to. And that would be none other than Kyle Bills. Hi, Kyle. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. And one of the things that we've been talking about doing this podcast for a little bit, and I'm glad that you were able to hop on tonight and do it. I know that you're a big draft guy, right?
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
so much a draft guy. I mean, I enjoy it, but the schedule release, maybe it's because I'm basic, but I love the schedule release. I get as excited, almost more excited about the schedule release. It feels like Christmas to me, of just being able to kind of see what the what the calendar looks like and what these big marquee games are going to be, especially now that the Bills are good and we're in the mix and we're getting a ton of play and a lot of featured games. So a few of the games have already been announced. Obviously, I think the first to be announced was the international game down in Brazil, and that's the Packers and the Eagles. That's going to be the Friday, and then Thursday just came out the other day. It's actually a Sunday night football game, but it's Thursday because it's an NBC property, and that's going to be the Chiefs and the Ravens. Before we get into the Bills, you have any thoughts on that matchup or those two games?
It's going to be cool to see a game in Brazil. Obviously, Packers, Eagles fans travel well. Um, and obviously, the NFL's been working here for quite a few years to expand their horizons overseas. We've seen a lot of games in Europe, so it'll be cool to see what should be two really good teams facing off down in Brazil. And then what can you say about the Ravens and Chiefs? They played in the AFC Championship last year. Um, Obviously, both of them, like every other team, lost some players, gained some players. So it'll be interesting to compare the game that we saw in last year's AFC Championship to what we see in this matchup. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how the addition of Derrick Henry to
Yeah.
that Baltimore run game really changes the Ravens' offense.
Yeah, that backfield is going to be crazy. I mean, fast and just being able to bludgeon you.
Hmm.
The one thing I heard some guys talk about I think it was Shope and the Bulldog on GR Buffalo Radio the other day, and they were saying, kind of comparing the Ravens of this upcoming year to where the Bills were like 2 years ago after the 13-second game, and they're kind of the darling that everybody wants to see. Lamar coming off his second MVP. That was a really good game last year. With them, I don't know if there's any fatigue nationally with the Bills at this point in time, but I definitely think that the Ravens kind of have like the it thing and seem to be the it team going into the season. What would you say? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, they're certainly kind of getting the same press that the Bills got there for a stretch of 3 to 4 years. Um, the one interesting thing, I've always been a fan of the Bills being under the radar.
Yeah.
So it kind of feels like we're going into this season under the radar, especially with the loss of Stefan Diggs. Everyone thinks we're going to take a big
Loss,
step back.
loss,
Um,
loss, Kyle.
yeah, well, I'm more of a addition by subtraction person when it comes to the dig thing. So I'm very excited at what we have going in. I think Joe Brady with a full off season to prepare kind of like a receiver committee instead of everything being focused around Stephon Diggs. So that'll be interesting to see.
Well, one thing you texted me, I was kind of like crazy busy today, but they keep adding receivers to the wide receiver room. What do you think of the latest pickup?
Well, I know just being on Twitter myself, or X as they call it these days, there's been a lot of hate for this pickup. Um, from what I read earlier, the money's not that big, and it's not a guarantee that he makes the roster. However, if you have MVS as your third receiver, I think you're doing okay. If he's your fourth receiver,
Right?
you're
Yeah.
doing pretty good. And if he's your fifth, then you're playing with house money.
Who do you think, like in the depth chart, is it going to be like a him versus Claypool kind of thing? Um, I mean, is it go? I mean, honestly, to think about where the wide receiver room was just like 3 weeks ago, and just I mean, they've got depth. I mean, you may not. These guys aren't marquee guys, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them are getting second, third chances, but they've definitely brought some guys in.
Yeah. Uh, One thing that a lot of people think that we didn't have last year was speed. When you bring in MVS, Curtis Samuel, there's some speed right there. I also believe that Khalil Shakir went completely under the radar last year. Um, he obviously gained a little bit of attention at the end of the season, but to me, he's kind of that possession receiver, kind of like Kincaid is as a tight end slash wide receiver, whatever you want to call him. He doesn't drop the ball. He had the highest catch percentage in the league last year. And then you had a big body like Keon Coleman, speed with Samuel, possibly MVS. I mean, I feel like, and then you have James Cook coming out of the backfield, which a lot of
Yeah,
people don't even think about. So, like I said earlier, I'm really excited at the different options we have compared to previous years.
we definitely have options, and I think that when you look at the guys that they're bringing in the wide receiver room, they're all big. They're all tall guys. At least the
Mm-hmm.
guys that they've gotten with Coleman on. I mean, Samuels is kind of a little bit smaller, but I think him and Shakir, body wise, are comparable. But
Mm-hmm.
they definitely are gonna gonna try to bully some people today or this
Mm-hmm.
year for sure. And I think running back wise, like the guys that they got in the draft, like Davis, those are guys that all can catch the ball. Like I heard a stat the other day that Davis had went from like 16 receptions in his like first year in college to like 32 in his second, and then like I think it was like 60 plus in the last one. So there's a guy that beyond running the ball, it sounds like he's good with picking up blitz and in pass blocking, but also is a guy that they're going to target out of the backfield. If I mean, I would say they took him high enough that he's definitely going to get a roster spot.
Yeah. And then during the draft, I listened to Mel Kiper kind of break him down, said a lot of the things that you just said. He's a physical runner, and even though he's small, he can really
Yep.
get through the line there. And then the blocking is what Kiper was raving about. I saw a couple replay videos of him where he looked like he was going to turn around after 5 steps to catch the ball, and he realized as he was making his turn that someone was breaking free coming after the quarterback and just rocked him. And that sort of stuff is exactly what Buffalo needs.
Yeah, they definitely need to have an attitude. And that's the one thing. Just kind of like just riffing here, but the one thing about the Bills the last few years that I don't think they've had, other than just Josh Allen, is an identity. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not like they're not like it seemed like when Dayball was here, it was like up top, going over the defense, big plays, and Josh will make magic happen to pick up the short stuff if needed. Um, but the last 2 years, it just if it doesn't feel like they had an identity, and it seemed like wanted to do something with when Dorsey was here that didn't work, and they're now going a completely. I don't know if they're going a different direction, but they definitely, I think, are continuing on with playmakers that are big guys. You know, you had Kincaid as their first draft pick last year. They get a big receiver with their, first draft pick this year. And then all the guys, like I said, that they brought in. Like, I think that their identity is they're going to run the ball and they're going to bully people. Like,
Hmm.
I'm there for that. Like, I am there for them just absolutely pounding the rock and just rolling over people this year.
Yeah, and I think we got a taste of that when Brady took over last year. That's kind of when
That
the
Cowboys
emphasis
game,
on the
oh my
run game.
God.
Yeah,
I think that
yeah,
Cowboys game is going to be a lot of what they want to do, and it's like that. Well, I mean, it's always great to beat the Cowboys.
yeah.
Speaking of which, so let's get back to the schedule, and that's another team
Hmm.
where we have learned where they're starting the season, and that is Week 1, a Fox game, 4:25 against the Browns, and it's going to be Tom Brady's first game as a color commentator, and so that's going to be a big one. I don't really want to talk about that game per se, but I think it does kind of clear a little bit of maybe where the Bills are going to end up playing. Um, I was asking people yesterday. Well, first off, I got to get to it. Like, I'm distracted. But we have our first sponsor, and if you can see on the screen there, Three Chord Bourbon. I want to thank Steve Shaw, a friend of ours, and Kyle actually, ran into him and told him we were doing a podcast, and he hooked us up and connected us with Three Chord Bourbon. So they are our first official sponsor, and I've got some bottles over there that I'm gonna crack open. One of them tomorrow night. We've got like a bourbon cream that looks really good, and then there's a rye, and then another. I believe it's just a bourbon, and I'll give more detail on that. But you can get yours online. You can get your three chord bourbon online as long as you're not from Michigan or Texas. Or I do believe that they do have it in a couple of locations near you and near us. I highly recommend going and taking a sip of that. There is their website, and you can find them at threechordbourbon.com. Really cool story, and actually, why Steve kind of connected us with them is they have a Buffalo and a Western New York connection, and so he thought it would be a good fit. They are a whiskey and bourbon company that really makes bourbon and whiskey for people who make music and play music. And I'm hoping that the Bills and their new additions are making sweet music on the field this year. And so we're really excited to have them as our sponsor for the next couple of episodes. So with that, let's get into the schedule. So we know that we're not going to be playing on Monday night because the Jets, I think that's great. They get to go right back to Monday Night Football. And this time they get to go all the way across the country. And Aaron Rodgers gets to kind of come home to Northern NoCal. And they take on the 49ers. So that is your first Monday night game. We've obviously talked about the Sunday or Thursday and the Friday game. But the Sunday stuff is I kind of up in the air. Have they announced who the Sunday night football matchup is yet?
I don't believe they have.
I don't
Not
think
yet.
so either, but I would not imagine that they end up putting us there because we do have the short week and playing at Miami on Thursday
Hmm.
night. So I really think that they're going to end up putting us in the 1 o'clock spot on Sunday. It just makes sense because that's going to give the Bills as much time to rest as they possibly can. So I would assume that the Dolphins are probably also going to be in that 1 o'clock spot. And I was talking with a Dolphin friend of mine. Yes, I do have those. And he was saying that it sounds like, from what he's heard in some rumors in Dolphin Twitter, that they are probably going to be starting on at home. So it looks like they're going to be 2 home games in a row. So, do you think Buffalo gets 2 home games, or do you think that they'll be on the road for week 1?
Um, I believe that they'll, since they're going, I believe they're going to Miami on Thursday night.
Yep.
It's not in Buffalo,
Yep,
so
correct.
my guess, best guess, would be that they're going to be at home in the 1 o'clock spot as well.
I believe that they are too. And kind of doing some deduction, taking a look at their opponents. So we know that they're not playing the Jets because
Hmm.
that is going to happen. I doubt they're going to make them play Miami 2 games in a
Yeah,
row.
yeah.
That would be wild. And
Well, we wouldn't want to put the Dolphins in that much misery to start the
yeah, you're
season.
right. Uh, the Chiefs, that's not going to be them. I don't see them putting Houston. I think that's going to be a night primetime game, and I don't think that we're going to be in that 8:15 Sunday
Hmm.
night slot. So I think then you're looking at, again, you could be opening up on the road. I think Indy is a candidate for that. Obviously, we're not. It's not going to be Baltimore. I don't think
Hmm.
it's going to be Detroit. I don't think it's going to
Hmm.
be any of those teams. I think it's either going to be Arizona, Jacksonville, or Miami, or not Miami, New England. And I'm
Hmm.
hoping that it ends up being New England or Arizona, like in Buffalo at 1. I don't know if they'd make Arizona do the 1 o'clock thing right
Hmm.
out off the bat. So I'm thinking it's going to be the Patriots, and that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you? Any thoughts of what you wish for, or what you think is going to end up being the game that they end up getting week 1?
Yeah, I kind of did a process by elimination thing like you just ran through earlier today, and I came down to basically it being one of those three teams, or maybe Tennessee. Um, Tennessee being the least likely. I do think, like you said, it comes down to Arizona or New England. Um, I, for whatever reason, I just get a feeling that they're not going to put us up against Jacksonville week 1.
No, I don't. Even though I don't think Jacksonville has the draw power. I mean, obviously Lawrence is good, but I think they were kind of that it team last year after they had their run and really took Kansas City to the mat as well. I don't feel like people feel like they're that team this year. As we talked earlier, I think Baltimore is the darling. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I could see. It'd be interesting. It'd be interesting if they made them play. If Buffalo ended up in Jacksonville at 1 o'clock. It's funny. Like Dolphins Twitter today was. It's amazing. I feel like Dolphin fans, like 98% of them, need to be on pros because
Yeah.
it's like talk about you get a week 2, you get a prime time Thursday night game, and it was like everybody was like complaining. It's like, oh, they're doing this to cater to the Bills because that way,
Hmm.
Josh Allen doesn't have to play in the heat. And I'm like, really? I'm like, you guys have a home
Yeah.
prime time game against your arch nemesis early. Even though it may be at night, it's still probably going to be humid AF.
Hmm.
And it's South Florida, which that time of year sucks. It's just
Yeah.
not fun. So, but to see them like melting down over like something again, talk about looking a gift horse in the mouth. I mean, the one thing I will say is that maybe I don't think they're favoring the Bills, but it does mean that Miami is most likely going to be coming to Buffalo in December. And God, how awesome would it be if it was in January?
Well, I find it funny that back when that game that Buffalo played in Miami and the Bills players were complaining about the heat and
Yep.
everything, back then Dolphins fans were saying that weather doesn't matter. And now that the sun is taken out
Right.
of it, now weather matters. I actually pulled someone on Twitter today said that Josh Allen has literally abused us ever since he got drafted. So, yes, I'm pissed that the NFL continues to protect him and Bills fans from the sun. God forbid the big bad wolf has to play in the sun. Pathetic. And so
Oh,
I just pulled up a quick stat. Including games in the hot sun, Josh
okay.
Allen has a career record of 10-2 against Miami, 11-2 if you count the playoffs. Allen has accounted for nearly 4,000 yards, 39 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. and a 109.2 passer rating. I'm
Damn.
not sure about you, Nate, but I'm thinking that the Dolphins and their
He's
fans,
their
for that
daddy.
matter,
He is
yeah,
their daddy.
I think the Dolphins and their fans are Josh Allen's son, but with an O.
Yeah, like I tweeted earlier. I'm like, I go Father's Day is usually in June, but this time it's in South Florida in September. But you know, it's funny that even in the losses, like that game, they could they did not he did not and they did not play really well. I mean, obviously that's the Ken Dorsey and the Surface Pro commercial. Wrecking the booth. Um, they should have won the game. They didn't
Mhm.
deserve to win the game. I mean, the one thing that game gypped us out of was the butt punt. Do you remember that play?
Yeah,
Like,
yep.
like if they had only pulled that out, that would have been what the lasting memory of that game was. And didn't he ended up, yeah, that's shorter, right?
Yes.
He ended up, yeah, he's he's now with us. Um, but yeah, that's fun. And but even that game they should have won. And
Mhm.
then I remember Allen's, I think it was his rookie season when they went down to South Florida, and it was a cooker of a day. And they lost, but they should have won that one too. Where he remember that he heaved that Hail Mary at the end, and Charles Clay, all he had to do was step out of the end zone and catch the ball. And I don't know what he ended up doing, but Allen ended up kind of hopping it in there from like 50 some yards. Should have won that game too.
Mhm.
He really, it's fun. It's funny how quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers when he was with Green Bay owned the Bears. It's literally the joke. And Allen is almost at that level with the Dolphins at this point.
Mhm.
It's awesome. Is Even though I loved Jim Kelly is my favorite Bill of all time, there's no team that he ever. I mean, like obviously he had success against the Jets and the Patriots and all that, but I just never felt like he was their daddy like he was with the Dolphins. Ah,
Yeah.
it's so great. It's so great. Um, what do you think about some of the other matchups? Taking a look at like some of the big games, the Houston, the Diggs matchup, the Chiefs. I think that's going to be a big one. I think the Rams are going to be really good this year too.
Yeah.
And that could be one that we don't really kind of pay attention to now. That could end up being a big game later on in the season. Where do you think some of those games are going to end up being, and do you think there's which ones do you think might end up being in prime time?
Um, well, I think given that we're all assuming that Rodgers is going to come back healthy, I wouldn't be surprised to see Bills Jets be another primetime game this year. Um, because we didn't really get to see Aaron Rodgers versus Josh Allen last year, only 4 plays. So that could be one. I think Kansas City is almost a shoe in to be. I'm leaning towards like a Sunday night game. Um, and then, like you said, the Texans, it's Diggs coming back, or we're going to Texas. But Diggs versus the Bills, that's going to be a big storyline. So that has potential. 49ers.
Yeah,
I was actually thinking earlier, they got to come to Buffalo. It would be a pretty cool game to have San Francisco in Buffalo on Christmas Day. Now, whether we get
that would be
Christmas
awesome.
Day or Thanksgiving game, I'm not sure yet, but I think San Francisco and Buffalo on Christmas Day would be really cool.
Now, over the years, when it comes to like Thursday games, like do they normally only make you play one Thursday game?
Um, I believe so. I think what they try to do is get as many teams as possible to play on Thursday, so that usually relegates most teams to one Thursday night game. I think I remember a couple of years ago when I don't know if it was when one of the NFC South teams was on Thursday night twice, but they were
Yep.
really bad. Um, but yeah, I think the general rule is, especially for the good teams, they tend to only play once on a Thursday.
You know what? I could see that Jets game ending up on like that Black Friday. That
Yeah.
would be. I don't know if they want to make the Jets. a Black Friday team, kind of like tradition, but like they hosted it last year.
Mhm.
Boy, they got rolled by Miami, but it seemed to make sense with that. That'd be an interesting spot for that game. I was just kind of thinking of like the Thursday games. Actually, here's a fun fact: if the Bills end up playing on Christmas, which is a Wednesday this year, right?
Yes.
So Josh Allen will I think have played on almost every day of the week because I wasn't there a COVID game on a Tuesday.
Yeah, it was either COVID or a snow game that
Yeah,
got
so
pushed
I
to
think there was
Tuesday.
like a Tuesday game, and there's somebody might comment and let me know how wrong I am on that. But I wonder if there are other players that have played on every day of the week
I can't imagine. I
because Fridays are not usually a thing. So I mean, maybe there's been a Christmas or a holiday game over the years, but like I can't.
mhm,
Well, there will be the Black Friday game, and then also the international game too. But yeah, that'd be interesting if he ended up playing on Friday or Wednesday, because
mhm,
he may be one of the few players to actually have played a professional, meaningful game. But when his career's done on every single day of the week,
yeah.
that's my trivia mind. That's how I work. I think the Kansas City game is interesting because so last 2 years that was a CBS 4 o'clock game. The year before that, it was that COVID? That was the year after COVID. That was a NBC Sunday night game,
Mhm,
and then that was a like a COVID weird reschedule on like a Monday at afternoon at like 3 or 5, something like that. So that
mhm,
game's been all over the place, and I think that I mean, I can't imagine CBS getting that game for a third time in like a 4 o'clock spot. Yeah, like I think you're right. I think a
mhm,
primetime Sunday night game, but I always want like I was actually surprised that Buffalo Miami. I would have thought Amazon if like would have fought for like a marquee matchup like that. And
mhm.
who knows? Maybe that ends up being a Black Friday game.
Yeah,
Maybe
it
we'll get
very
to
well could
watch
be.
football games in Buffalo on every single day of the week this year. Um, what game of the schedule? What is the game that you are looking forward to the most?
Um, well, I actually haven't been to a home game in a couple years, so um, once the schedule actually releases and the timing and everything, I'm definitely looking forward to getting to a home game. I'm hoping it could be one of the marquee matchups, but um, the one that intrigues me the most is probably going down to Houston. Uh, we don't have the greatest memories down in
No,
Houston from the playoffs, what, 4 or 5 years ago. But now we've
or
got a
even
little.
regular season. Remember when Allen busted his elbow in that game? Missed a couple
Oh
games his
yeah,
rookie year.
yep. But yeah,
Clowney.
the whole Diggs thing kind of throws a new wrinkle, and I was a big Diggs fan before he came to Buffalo. I was a big Diggs fan when he was here, and then towards the end, I kind of lost my appetite for him. So it would just be really nice to travel down there and remind him who he left.
I would agree, and I think that Houston game. Do you think that game ends up being earlier or later in the season?
I have a feeling it might be earlier to middle of the season, just because the later in the season you get, the more you risk the opportunity of Diggs being hurt or Diggs's production going down, like maybe last year's Stefon Diggs. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think it was probably going to be in the first half of the season. That would be my guess.
I think you're right. I guilty. I'm hoping that it ends up being later. One of the things that we're doing with the QK Bills backers this year is we're planning on doing and plug for our group is we're planning on doing a home and road uh, trip So in Houston is actually one of the spots that we've targeted and actually been in contact with about doing a road trip. And I'm just hoping to God that it ends up being in like November, December, where my work schedule works with it on a weekend to make it a little bit easier to get to. So that's definitely one that I think would be a fun road trip.
Hmm.
And we were planning that actually even before the season was over last year. Um, and then when the whole Diggs thing went down, I'm like, oh man, this is really going to be juicy. That's going to be a nice trip. If not, I think that Colts trip might be a nice, fun one for Bills fans. That's not
Hmm.
too far where you couldn't drive it. There's a lot of games that are like even the away games that are drivable this year. I mean, obviously, it's like they're either like relatively close or on the other side of the country. I mean, taking a look at their away teams, obviously, the Houston one that we were just talking about, Indianapolis is drivable. Rams and Seahawks, that's a hike. Obviously, the divisional games, and Baltimore. It's like we're not even like. Isn't it funny? Like they are such a good team, but like they're not like in the conversation of like Kansas City of like really being amped up as far as an
Hmm.
opponent. And I think anytime you get to see Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen on the same field, like pinch yourself.
Hmm.
That's just one step below Mahomes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one that I didn't even mention at the beginning or towards the beginning of this when we were talking about potential for primetime games. That I could see that being a primetime game, but I could also see that being a 1 o'clock CBS game.
Yeah,
And yeah, like you said, I mean, you've got probably the two biggest dual threat quarterbacks going head to head, and each of them have a fairly new set of receivers plus a couple returns from last year, both high powered offenses. And obviously, Baltimore's always had a great defense. And even though Buffalo lost some stable horses from our defense, I think that we've done a good job so far in the offseason to kind of get younger, faster, and hopefully be just as good, if not better, on defense this year.
I think they're going to be solid. I do think that I think that they're going to be better on the edge than we think. I think
Hmm.
I know a lot of people don't believe this, but I think Von Miller's going to be back. Like I think that he's going to be. He may not be like prime Von, but I think that he's going to be at an elite level. I really do. I'm just seeing last year what happened with Trey White, and when he came back at the end of the season before that, he was a shell of
Hmm.
what his ability was. But having that extra, off season and getting back at it last year, it really is too bad that he had the injury because before that he looked like old Trey. And I
Hmm.
think that we're going to see that with Miller this year. Like, I think that he's going to be back. So I think the defense is going to be solid. I think the kid Bishop that they drafted at safety with Rap, I think those two dudes are going to be okay. I think
Hmm.
linebacker, I think they're going to be solid. I'm looking to see what Bernard does in year two. I think he's going to take another step forward. Um,
And hopefully we get Milano back at full health. I don't know if it'll be right at the beginning of the season, but
you know,
hopefully we can get back in
I
prime
would agree.
form.
Speaking of Milano and getting back to the schedule, I remember like, in the Ravens. Do you remember that game where Lamar Jackson just kind of posterized Milano on
Hmm.
like a scramble? He just like froze him and just broke his ankle. I mean just and to do that to Matt Milano is wild. So like yeah,
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to that game. So taking a look at the schedule, let's kind of cut this wrap it up here. um Prediction, take a look at those. I'm going to put the I'm gonna put the home and away opponents. We obviously know Miami is a primetime Thursday night game. What are your predictions as far as other primetime games?
I wrote it down here earlier. I've got the Jets, Texans, and I had them slotted in as Monday night games. I've got Kansas City as a Sunday night game. Um, if we play on Black Friday, I actually had Baltimore slotted in there, so I'm not sure if that would count as a prime time. And then the holiday one, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, I've got San Francisco.
All right, so 5. So I think that's right where we were last year, right?
I think we had 6 last year
6.
with the flex at the end of the season for the division against Miami, but
I think that game's going to get flexed again. I think that I was so excited for that one to because you know that's going to be the end of the season. Like after the way it ended last year, I think they're gonna be like back to the well. Let's see if
mm-hmm.
we can, rub some pixie dust together and end up with Buffalo and Miami for the division again. That would be awesome. So yeah, I think primetime games: San Francisco, Miami, obviously, Kansas City, Houston. Um, I think that second Miami game, and then you know what? One we haven't talked about at all, and I think it's going to be a sixth. Detroit.
Yeah.
I think Detroit. That's a juicy matchup. Their schedule is so fun. I mean, really, the
Mm-hmm.
duds, the duds are freaking the Patriots, and
Mm-hmm. Maybe
maybe
the
the Cardinals,
Titans.
but the Cardinals could be
Yeah.
really good too. I mean, they're going to
Yeah.
be fun to watch. I mean, they're going to sling the ball, and it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
neat to see Harrison Jr. Come into town. That's going to be wild. I mean, there really is like I remember when the schedule, or the opponents were announced. I'm like, but I mean, I honestly think that the two sleeper games are that Detroit game and the Rams game. Like
Mm-hmm.
and I even think the Colts could turn it around.
Yeah.
Richardson is healthy. They could be solid too. That whole division, that South division, is going to be tough. But yeah, so I
Mm-hmm.
think 6. I'm thinking they're going to get 6 prime time. I think that Miami early one, I would have put that one at 1 o'clock. Like I would have thought
Mm-hmm.
that they would have wanted to, you know, make drama, and that would have been drama, putting them out in the sun. But yeah, no, I think that's cool. We're planning on hopping on and doing this again tomorrow night after the schedule is actually released and kind of going through. Um, you plan on going to any games this year?
Yeah, I would really like to get to at least one home game, and if my work schedule allows it, get into an away game as well. Hopefully with the Cuca Bills backers.
Oh, that'd be so much fun. So, for those of you that may not be part of the QK Bills backers, uh, join us. There's a Facebook group, QKA Bills backers. It's a Facebook group, so you can join that. We actually just started a Facebook page for the Bills backers, and the reason I did that, I wanted to keep it a group, but Meta changed everything, so we are doing this right now on the page as well, where we couldn't do that on the group. So being able to live stream and share and stuff like that, I think just made sense. And yeah, it's that the Bills backer. Man, that thing took off way faster and bigger than I thought it was going to, and that's awesome. And I think it's also cool to have really great partners, Laurentide Beer Company, uh, great hosts, super fun. Tracy and Marla have just been so accommodating with putting the schedule together. Um, it would be funny. We should have them on and be like, who do you hope for watch parties and having to be open on times when you're not open? Where do you
Yeah.
hope the schedule is? I know right out of the shoot, like I was looking at it Thursday night, Miami. They usually close at like 8, so it's like game doesn't start till 8. Yeah, you're gonna be open. Yeah, it's gonna be great. But yeah, if you've never been to one of our watch parties, they're awesome. Kyle's been to a bunch of them with friends. I host. We do super fun stuff, prizes, and it's game on all the screens. We have the audio pumped in, during the game and between commercials. We do trivia questions, play some music. It's lively. It's a super fun time. And one of the things that is I think people overlook is that there wasn't one time last year that usually when you go out to watch a game, there's always annoying people that just won't shut up or just make it really kind of unwatchable. And we didn't have any of that. I didn't see any of
Yeah.
that.
No.
And that was a blessing. So it's a good group of people. You should come watch it. So Kyle, let's do this again tomorrow night when the schedule comes out, and we'll go through it and kind of do a prediction. And I think it'll probably be our first like win-loss prediction too. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah. Be excited to do that. I'm sure I'll probably overshoot for wins, but I'm optimistic.
Sixth. Do you know Brian? Yeah, you know Brian Housel, right?
Yeah.
16-0 every year, right? Or no,
Yep.
what is it? 17 now? 17-0.
Yeah. 17.
One of these years he's going to be right. All right, man.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with me tonight. That was fun.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome.
Everybody else, we will see you tomorrow night, probably about 10 o'clock, same time. Hop on the socials and let us know what your predictions are for the schedule before we get there. And then join us tomorrow and we'll go through it and you can give us your thoughts too. Kyle, I'll see you tomorrow night.
All right.
Be good. That was fun.